I'm going to get us kicked off. Feel free to grab a beverage yourself. Good evening. Thanks for joining us for our Ag Innovation Challenge Design Sprint Pitchback. And we're going to go over the past week. We've had about 20 participants, give or take, engage with ag entrepreneurs, viticulture specialists, nonprofit leaders, and growers throughout the country, from Florida to Oregon, Tennessee to California, which is really pretty inspiring. And in particular, I want to give a shout out to Alex and Sean Irvine, because they found some really great speakers. It was particularly interesting. My personal favorite office hour of the week, and Jeff, don't be offended, was I loved our viticulture specialist from OSU. We learned a lot about the process of growing grapes, and it again just proved out some of the things that we don't know as we go through this process. So I haven't done the part where I introduced myself yet. I'm Kara Toronto. I'm the COO here at the Technology Association of Oregon. We've hosted the event this week. It is part of our partnership with SEDCOR for our EDA grant over the course of the next 2 years to talk about ag innovation, and in particular build our Northwest Ag Innovation Hub. I am supported this evening by Justin Martinez, our event and program coordinator. Justin's waving. He makes all of the magic happen. And I'd like a moment to reflect. So we hosted an event similar to this almost 1 year ago. I guess we went into lockdown as a state on March 13th, or that's when it was announced. Everything went into effect on the March 15th or 16th. We had planned on doing this Ag Innovation Challenge in April, and it was with SEDCOR and the City of Independence. And we sat down as a team and we're like, all right, we are going to do this online. We're going to figure it out. And it was a really high energy event. We had 70 folks. Like the Zoom platform was new, and it was really exciting. But we shared lessons learned at the end of that, and I'd like to take the opportunity to do this again. So here we are in Q1 of 2021. The world looks different, yet oddly the same. Zoom fatigue is real. I literally will never sit in this chair again if I don't have to, when I can go back to an office. I appreciate all of you being here. I'm really tired of you seeing my guest room. This event would be way more fun in person. I mean, we lose a lot of the interaction and one-off conversations that you have in the networking pre-event. We don't get to be in Indy Commons or wherever Eric would like us to be in Salem. We're aware of that. So fingers crossed in September, we can do this live and in person. We do like that this conversation and this format allows us to engage with individuals state and nationwide. So that has been something that's pretty compelling, and we're not really sure how we'll pull that into the narrative. We've heard both of our keynotes are not local, and that's intentional because they come from rural and ag innovation backgrounds to kind of highlight what we can do. So that is the positive that we still have in this environment. The other thing that we find really compelling, and I think Eric and Alex could both speak to this, but this intersection of ag and tech continues to strike a chord with folks. And we hope to be able to find additional funding for seed investment and field trials, because not only do we see our technologists enjoying the conversation, the leaders in our ag community appreciate the interest and like a model where they can share their expertise in a one-to-many format. And we heard that twice this week. I get called a lot about this. Like, people want to ask me about ag tech constantly. I really like the fact that I could talk to 12 people at once versus 12 one-off conversations. So there is something in this model that resonates, particularly with our producers, our growers, and the folks that support them. That works. So that was an important lesson learned. And then, lastly, like, please give us input for improvement. Justin is an employee, but also a keen observer of events. And he said, perhaps this would be different if we set it up as, a week of innovating and a week of designing and a week of developing and a week of pitching back, and did that over the course of a year instead of a week, and found a way to get people to convene and be able to work on one platform together. So know that we want to hear your feedback, and know, I'm probably going to say this 8 times tonight, that we hope to be able to be doing this at some hybrid or in-person model in the fall. So with that, it's always a pleasure to introduce Alex Paraskevas, who I don't technically work with, but I feel like I do. I know many of you all know him. He's the Business Retention and Expansion Rural Innovation Catalyst at SEDCOR. He's going to say a few words about what he learned this week. Then we're going to start the pitchbacks. We have a keynote speaker who'll join us a little later in the evening. So once again, our online format provides us the opportunity to be non-traditional. So Alex, take it away.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, I'm Alex Vasquez. I work for SEDCOR. So we're kind of, we wrote for the grant and for the federal EDA grant. So, and we've been really kind of, I would say, doubling down on agriculture and technology over the last couple of years. The one thing I will note is that we're probably the only economic development organization that I know of that's actually focusing on agriculture as an opportunity. And that's really exciting. And it's fun to ferret out the folks in the area, in the state, and across the country who are also interested, who are also sort of giddy, just like I am when I talk to them, and have like really fun, interesting conversations and whatnot. So I think this week has been, I would say, a little bit as expected. The Zoom fatigue, I would agree, is real for everybody. And so, last year we did have about 70 participants, and I think we had lightning in a bottle, and Zoom was still novel. The piece that I always, I went through my own, I would say, sort of education, transformation, understanding of agriculture over the last 3 years. And it's really, really fun to watch other people have the aha moments and start putting together that agriculture and sort of just farming is really complicated, multi-layered, sort of much more difficult than anybody gives it credit for. I don't think Priyansha's on the call, but I know she was asking on one of the sessions, she was asking about like, so what's the one silver bullet? And she was laughing as she said it, because she knew that that question is laughable. It's like, there's not, the silver bullets for the most part have been identified, right? The silver bullets in agriculture are, there's not tons of, forgive the pun, low-hanging fruit. But what the opportunity really is, and that I see, is relationship building and strengthening, right, building better businesses and building better farms. And so I think coming out of this, what we're really hoping for is continued conversation, continued excitement. Of course, selfishly, or maybe not selfishly, but I think I want everybody to have a better understanding of sort of local supply chains, how our agriculture works, and maybe how it's different from other parts of the country. And then just to get back on the soapbox just right quick, it's like every Oregonian should be proud of what we grow and the way we grow it. And I think that's the fun, that's like the sort of fun, digestible takeaway that I want from all of this. So I think there were some, I'm constantly impressed, amazed at some of the questions people ask and the conversations and maybe the rabbit holes that we fall down. Kara's particularly good at getting to the heart of the matter with some of her questions, especially. And I hope that for some of you, especially around the Know What You Grow challenge, we talked to the Oregon Fruit Products CEO on Monday afternoon and just had a conversation around his supply chain and hearing about sort of like the what I always refer to as, and what is referred to as sort of belly to belly relationships in agriculture kind of carry through all the way to the processor, especially when you're talking about Oregon companies. Like we joke that Oregon is a small town, and I think Oregon agriculture and food production and whatever else is equally small. And so it's always interesting to hear how sort of the corporate environment still requires like the pick up the phone and call a blueberry grower when push comes to shove, right? And I think those are the fun kind of little tidbits that I think came out this week. I'm really looking forward, to doing these in person, to be perfectly honest. I think my dream is that the next, we're planning to do one in the fall as well. And I hope beyond all hopes that we can do that in person, because I would love to take every team on farm tours, every team like to go meet some of these farmers. And of course, my favorite place in the county is the Rick Rial Dairy. And I want everybody to come to the Rick Rial Dairy and see the sort of insanity of what dairy farming looks like, but also that milk is the loss leading byproduct and of what they do. And I think those are the kinds of aha moments that are really, really impactful when it comes to sort of understanding just the bits of Oregon agriculture. So I'm gonna probably stop there unless you want me to add anything, Kara. I was gonna introduce our judges.
I didn't know if maybe Eric wanted to throw anything out there too, since he's joining us tonight.
Let me actually, before Eric starts, just one thing. We did a forum lunch. SEDCOR does business sort of forums once a month. We had to postpone ours to today because of the ice storm. A lot of people didn't have power, down in the valley. That was recorded, and it was really, really, it was a good overview of what the Northwest Ag Innovation Hub is all about and what we're trying to do with the project generally. The design sprint is actually sort of just like one component to it. But if you're interested at all, or if it's something that's like tickled your fancy this week, like I would encourage you to watch the recording. It'll be on our Facebook page, hopefully tomorrow, sometime in the next 3 days. How about we'll say that, and I'll hedge a little bit. So, and yeah, always happy to, after this to take any inbound phone calls or referrals or anything. So Eric, I'll hand it to you.
Thanks, Alex. I'll just be really brief. I think just so folks that don't know SEDCOR or don't have the experience with what we've done in the past, I think just this ag work is really coming from an organic place, no pun intended. I think we're in the heart of the Willamette Valley, and sometimes you have to, in my case, you have to leave the region, go to Sweden, and learn about wineries that are selling in Gothenburg, Sweden, and where the staff knew how to pronounce not just Oregon but Willamette. And it came back, and you just start to think, well, what do we do to get that enthusiasm about Oregon's Willamette Valley, happening here? And we've got 100+ years of food processing experience in the region, and some household names as a result of that history, the 170+ crops that are grown here. I mean, we just have a lot going for us. And I think once we start to recognize that a lot of our other industries are connected or interconnected to agriculture, it's a real opportunity for us. And I think it's also true to our roots. And that's I think in economic development, that's a nice place to be in, where we're all kind of passionate about the work and passionate about what the region offers. And, sometimes you're in a nice position where you get to do this and not be faking enthusiasm, but actually being genuinely enthusiastic about the businesses we get to work with and the entrepreneurs we get to work with. And I just really appreciate the interconnectivity of all this, and working with Technology Association of Oregon, Oregon Entrepreneurs Network, and our education partners. I think we're just all sort of segueing or merging into the same lane at this point, and it's really exciting work. So and thank people for participating and continuing to be in the loop on this. And like everybody else has been saying, we hope that we can do this in person, and plenty of outdoor space available in the beautiful Oregon summers. So we look forward to doing this with people in the future. I'll hand it back to you, Alex.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Alex is handing it over to me.
Oh.
I like to say Jack and Vanna White these days. So I think are still on TV and are definitely been on TV since I was born. So I'm going to introduce our judges. I'm super excited to do this. Brian Hockett is the founder of Seller Active and CEO of BookBite. Maybe, Brian? I can't remember the timeline.
No, not now. I'm a free agent now.
The former CEO of BookBite and is now a free agent who knows a thing or two about starting a business, growing it, and he happens to be a resident of St. Paul, Oregon, so local, and has some great insight. And I've actually had the opportunity to be a judge with him in the past. And then we also have Mike White joining us, who's the Mid-Valley Venture Catalyst with the Oregon Entrepreneurs Network and founder of Best Damn Barbecue Sauce, who brings his own flavor, pun totally intended, of entrepreneurship to our judging panel. No pressure, he's also a board member of the Technology Association of Oregon. So Mike, thanks for being here tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
And I'm going to ask Brian and Mike each a question really quickly. Are you experts in rural innovation or ag tech?
I'm an expert in nothing. That's my disclaimer.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, all jokes aside, I grew up on a family farm. As you said, I live in a community of growers. I'm in agriculture, so to speak, in Oregon, and have a technology background. So I'm kind of at an intersection of these two things. But expert's a very strong word to be thrown around.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, definitely not an expert. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I understand it, understand unit economics, building things from the ground up. Is it feasible? Will it last to the industry? Is there a market for it? Like, I'm all about that. So I can speak to those things.
Which is perfect because Mike just teed me up to explain the rules of our judging. And I did not share the script with Mike or Brian, and I likely should have. So we look at a few things. And again, like, this is really in good faith and good spirit and empathetic design for farmer-centric tech. So we're not holding people hard and fast, but we do take our guidelines from a normal hackathon where we would look at the ROI. So, what is the potential upside from a business standpoint? But then also in this situation, like the ROI for a producer, is it a solution or a design that's going to break all the time? If you haven't watched the PBS series, My Job Depends on Ag, which Alex is laughing, it makes this like the only thing I've binge watched during the pandemic is like free TV. There was a lot of talk about drones, and like they don't last very long in some of these more rugged conditions. So like think about that, like who is the ROI applying to? The aesthetics, the usability, the technology itself that you're talking about, functionality, the equity outcomes. So we really think about from our standpoint, like if this is meant to make a grower more operationally efficient, does it? And what does that look like? Who's making money off of this? And then the last thing is if you have a presentation or not. So I'm not 1,000% sure how many presentations we have. Once again, thanks y'all for letting us fly a little loose in this pandemic world, but I know Justin K and his team have put something together. So I'm gonna pause and let them take over the screen share if they're interested.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, it's been quite the week. We're excited to have participated. Let me see if I can find my screen share. Let's pull this open really quick and share my screen. In a very short amount of time, we've put together quite the group, and it's been pretty inspirational, pretty fast, pretty rapid. So I'm gonna just spare some time, and I'm going to throw it over to Jennifer because she's going to lead through the first part of this presentation. So Jennifer.
Okay. Hi, everybody. So I'm Jennifer, and our team chose the Microclimate Notification Challenge. And I've worked together with Justin Kuntz, Brian Loomis, Blake Bryant, Philip Bindeman, Thomas Fiorelli, and myself. So I'm going to walk you through our product. So the design sprint was to develop a tool to monitor microclimates to help growers make more informed decisions about crop selection and maintenance. And agriculture is one of the most client-sensitive industries worldwide. With a diverse set of microclimates, growers can never be certain if they're growing the right crops at the right time or staying ahead of climate-based maintenance needs of their crops. There are hundreds of sources of climate data for growers to sift through and understand in order to make important growing decisions. This information may be inaccurate, too macro, or not timely enough. And time spent analyzing this data takes time away from the field and production. Click. So we got some input from Kevin Matthews, who's a ranch farmer who owns a small ranch in Dexter, Oregon. And he talked to us about some of the challenges that he faces taking care of the grass that he grows for his horses. He spends about 3 to 4 hours per week reviewing various weather data. And he's found that this weather data accuracy is affected by the distance of the nearest weather station to his farm, which can cause for a plus or minus 5-degree difference, which doesn't sound like a big difference, but when you're talking about freeze versus or damaged crop versus undamaged from a freeze, that's a big number. And currently he's only using thermometers on his property to track localized temperature data. So we pulled some data from the Oregon Vineyards and Winery report. And for a farm size of about 54 acres, they already project an expected yield loss of about $17,000. And then if you add in the value of labor for a farmer or grower, who is, we say, about $41.62 an hour, and they spend 4 hours a week on research, that's another $2,000 in lost time. So we're looking at over 108 hours of lost time and $19,000 in lost yield. So what we learned was growers have hundreds of decisions to make every day to get the best yields from their crop. Climate is one of the top concerns for a grower. Growers may spend hours each week looking at weather and other complex data to make decisions about their crops, and it's important to research and develop new agricultural technologies and practices to mitigate the adverse effects of climate change. So what's needed? The data, temperature, moisture, rainfall, sunlight, solar energy, dew point, frost point, soil data, and then it's needed at a regional, local, and microclimate level. And then it needs to be delivered in a historical view, a present view, and even a future view. So our solution, growers can do that. They can view the information they want to see on their own land and the surrounding areas. They can get important notifications about various weather events or maintenance events. They can make informed decisions for their crop maintenance based on accurate and timely data. They can determine which crops may provide the best yield based on their particular microclimate, and they can save time and money. So now I'm going to introduce you to Hay. Hay is our product. It is a platform that's used to identify microclimate patterns to increase crop yields. We collect microclimate weather data to save time, protect crops, and plan resources for predictable and increased profits. And now I'm going to hand it back over to the team, Justin and the guys, and they are going to do a demo of our app.
Perfect. So let me bring open kind of our solution here. So the first thing we're presenting is just the traditional login system. So I'm going to go through in here, and we've created kind of a user Whitney. I'm going to sign her in. And within this, you'll notice that right away you're presented kind of a map view of kind of your farms. So with Hay, you can set up multiple farms. In this case, we have Hey Yeah Vineyards and Hey Yeah Farms. In particular, I'm gonna drill into Hey Yeah Vineyards. It's kind of where we demoed a lot of our information. So once you drill into the vineyard itself, you can break out your crops. And that way you can check sensor data and information that's really localized to that crop type. And that lets you inform and get informed and make decisions on what you might need to do for that crop based upon the crop that you planted. So I'm looking in here and I see that the Pinionor has kind of this red icon. So I'm curious what's going on there. So I'm going to actually click into it and drill into it. And it looks as though I have a sensor. One of my sensors is red. So right now, what I can see and what I didn't mention is we're immediately presented with the local weather data based upon kind of a weather station that has been assigned the nearest one. So right now we're pulling this from, the closest weather station. If we were to install a weather station, within our location, we could actually assign that and actually get more localized weather data. So that's an important point that a lot of the farmers brought up, and we really want to integrate that point. These are all the sensors. So this is kind of an aggregate of the sensors that are have been placed within this crop. You can see that I've got kind of some sensor information, and then we'll talk a little bit more about events a little bit later. But I'm going to go ahead and drill in a little bit. I'm going to zoom in into this area and see what's going on with this sensor. Obviously, there's something weird here. So I'm going to look into this thing, and it looks like it's lost connection of some sort. So, you know, with that, I'd like to pass the baton over to Philip, one of our other team members, to walk you through kind of the investigation of this. So Philip, are you there?
Yeah, hey everyone. It looks like we did indeed lose connection to our sensor. So no problem, we can go ahead and just investigate this event. And what you'll see is our new events tab. And here what we have is all of the events that kind of happened along this timeline down here. And looking at the event right here, it looks like it's just that it lost connection. So it looks like we'll just have to send someone out to go ahead and reconnect it to our system. It shouldn't be a problem. But what I'm really curious about myself right now is, what is this winter pruning going on over here? So I'm going to go ahead and click on it. And it looks like the team uploaded some pictures of the pruning that happened today. So I'm going to go ahead and look at the pruning trends graph that they uploaded as well. So I'm going to go ahead and click it. And here we have our graph that compares our pruning to last year. And we can kind of get an idea of how much more we've pruned this year compared to last year. And we're not just limited to things like pruning. We can compare all sorts of data, and we have all sorts of options to analyze data. So I'm going to go ahead and click on trends. And now, as you can see here, we have all of the data sources that we're gathering from our system. And this is great because you can contrast and compare, kind of understand what's happening, and you can select and deselect the different data. So I'm going to go ahead and click on precipitation and see what's happening there. And by default, we have this nice comparison between last year and this year. And we can change the graph. We can set the start and end date. And also our data right here, if we look down below, is automatically updated. In the case of pruning, the data is uploaded manually. But in this case, this is all sensor data that we are receiving, and also data from NOAA. And it's nicely organized here. And we also noticed that our events are not just distributed in time, well, they're also distributed here on our graph as well. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this freeze event, click view there. And this takes us to a geographical view of what that event looked like at that time. So in this case, this freeze event happened March 2nd, yesterday, which is kind of surprising. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look here. And here I can use this legend right here to kind of understand the temperature, the soil temperature, and it automatically brought up layers on our map here on our crop for soil temperature and air temperature, since that's what happened to go below freezing. So I'm going to go ahead and go back in time, since we're able to utilize drone data and satellite data to see what our crop looked like in the past. And in this case, since we just clicked on an event, when we click previous, that'll just take us to the next event of the same type. So in this case, this looks like a near freeze event. Our temperature in the legend isn't quite 32, but it's close enough to warrant an event and get a farmer ready for something, or get them ready to stay on guard in case of a freeze event. So I'm going to go ahead and click previous one more time. And here's another freeze event. And as we can see, all of our individual sensors here are the red dots are also reporting some the freeze event. So I'm going to go ahead and exit this time machine view and go back to the present view here. And so it looks like I have another notification on our Pinot Gris crop. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And let's see, looks like we have a recommendation here. So it says that I should divide up the crop because it has systematically different air temperature and soil moisture. So let's go ahead and click learn more and try to understand this a little bit better. So now what I get is this view of the recommendation. And I get kind of this geographical representation of what's happening. And to the left, I get kind of a sensor view. We see these red bell icons next to all of these sensors. And it looks like in this case, we have a really dramatic microclimate that's going right across the crop. And it would make a lot more sense for us to divide up the crop into two. And this would help us make better decisions in planning for fertilizing, watering patterns, and so forth. Since we have, looks like here, significantly different nitrogen levels and soil temperatures. And we can also click this graph right here to get more information. But I'm gonna go ahead and make the split. I trust that this is right, and go ahead and click there. And here we can readjust the geography of the crop, and we can set up our crop type. It's automatically set to the previous crop type since that's what it was. And we can even import our own custom crop data. And we also noticed that the system automatically added alerts that were on our old crop, Pinot Gris 1, and all these bounds are set automatically from a crop database. So we can customize them, but we also don't have to worry that they're wrong. And we also automatically added the 52 sensors that were previously in this geographic area. So there's no manual having to select each sensor. And a cool demonstration is we really wanted to make this geographical. So if I want to look at a sensor, I can just simply select it on a map. And if we scroll down here, we'll see that it's already been selected in our list down here. And I can go ahead and view specific details for that sensor. But this all looks good to me. So I'm going to go ahead and save these settings, confirm these settings there. And now we have our crop view, and we can see that our crop has been divided into two. And now we have a Pinot Gris 2 and a Pinot Gris 1. And I can use this information to make more informed crop decisions as a farmer or grower. So now I'm going to go ahead and pass it off. And we have a app demo that we created.
Perfect. Thanks, Philip. So as part of our sprint, we have quite a few software developers on our team. So they actually did a spike based upon a lot of the work we've done. And as part of that, we wanted to spin up an app. So I'm gonna toss it over to Brian, and he's just gonna talk briefly about his approach and what we've got going on here.
All right. Developing the concept for hay during the time constraint was a tall order, but we felt we could do more. Using modern tooling, we were able to quickly develop a mobile prototype that now runs on iOS and Android. This allows growers a back pocket experience to the insights and notifications hay provides. As you can see, many of the most useful features are available and are literally put at the user's fingertips for decision making. When zooming in, all data points are available and can be inspected individually. Crop attributes and weather data are preserved in layers when zooming and selecting. I think everyone can agree that this is a singular solution that provides immense value. Thank you.
So as this finishes running, they spun this up, and in addition, Thomas on our team, he did a ton of map work. And if it's all right, I don't know where we're running on time, but we could actually have him demo some of the maps. So Kara, are we doing all right on time?
Go. This is really cool. I'm like kind of blown away. I'm like, wow, thank you. I will be following up with you, Justin.
So Thomas, I don't know if you're on here, and it's kind of weird for me to lead here, but I'd love for you to kind of walk through some of the work you've done on the map if you're on here. I can't see you.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're looking at here is our weather station there in the center. It kind of orientates you to where our actual farm is located. What we've also provided is a macro view of all the different data layers that are available in real time from different federal and state agencies to help us understand what we're going to be expecting over the next typically 72 hours to 1 week or even 10 days. So as we look at the precipitation, you can see there's actually in this area expected to be 1 to 1.5 inches of rain over the next 72 hours. And as we zoom in a little bit more, you notice that we have readings directly from the weather stations that are located by different federal and state agencies. This allows us to understand just a little bit better what kind of temperature readings we're getting a good distance away from us and how those compare to what our weather readings are on site. We can develop a value-added proposition for our farmers if we can show there's a significant difference, especially like what Jennifer said, if we're going below a freeze point. So as you can notice on the layers list, there's lots of other things that we can look at that are relevant to a farmer that they can turn on and off that may be of value to them. We're not going to spend a lot of time going into those, but all of these are interactive and in real time with the intention to help them make smart, informed decisions.
Nice, thanks, Thomas. So you can see it's been a ton of times of maps. There's a ton of data. So we know that our platform has to kind of aggregate this all. What we know is growers spend a ton of time visiting different sites, different data sources. So our app, we want to integrate all of that map information right into our view. And then you can turn those layers on and off based upon what you're seeing here. In addition to that, we're looking at the microclimate level. So whether or not we install weather stations on the particular plot of land or go into the detail of drones to fly over and actually get temperature data and take pictures, we're trying to incorporate all of these tool sets into an app to where they have one source of truth, so to speak. So no, this has been, I mean, to kind of cap it all off, this has been exciting for our whole team, talented group. I'm really appreciative of all their time they put into this. And I think we've come a long way in the short amount of time that we've been able to kind of put things together. So with that, I'm just going to close out and say, hey, no.
Okay, really impressive. Our keynote is here, and I want to take a few minutes to let folks ask questions, particularly our judges. Like, I have one question. I'm going to start, but Alex makes fun of me because like I always ask the questions. The data sources, the maps, the weather, was all of that just publicly available for you all to access?
Yeah. So Thomas, you want to, or is that, sorry, who was speaking up? Sorry.
Yeah, very quickly, all of this data is available through web mapping services from NOAA and other federal agencies that provide information to different people for different reasons. All of them will put weather stations around in different places. You can actually source them into one location using Esri's mapping software, which is what we've done here. However, you can also go out and get their web mapping services directly and import them into our tool so that we can bypass Esri completely.
I was going to say, wow, Esri would love that. And then you said that second part, and I'm like, wow, I'm glad Esri's not on the call. Awesome job. And I appreciate that you talked to a producer. Brian, do you want to ask them any questions as you kind of noodle over this?
Yeah, this is awesome. Great job to you guys in a week. I have a million questions, but maybe just one big one is, where would you start with this application? Is it with the mapping, the more real-time and short-term forecasting data, or what seems to be a very valuable problem to solve is the prediction, the analytics of, what crops to put in and where. And those are two, different things. Well, I'll just leave it at that. Where do you start?
Hey, Justin, can I take this one?
You bet.
Okay, cool. So we actually had a lot of talk about this on the team about where we want to kind of take the direction of the app, given that we only had a week for developing this. And I can confidently say, unless anybody disagrees, that I would say the big part of the application is prediction for the future. Because we were talking a lot about like wine vineyards and stuff. And a common theme that came up early was that, a lot of these crops that are particularly temperamental don't have a really short seasonal life, meaning that they're going to grow for a while and they're going to continue over the course of like 2 years rather than 2 months. So predictions are going to become more and more important for these crops, specifically wine, because you need to make sure that the environment that you're growing in and the analytics and reports you're getting not only help you today, but help you 3 or 4 months from now. Because if the prediction model can say, hey, 3 or 4 months from now, like this environment's going to be donezo. You're going to have major freezing problems, or you're going to have more soil saturation than you want. It might damage your yields or something like that. Then that allows you time to either recoup costs, harvest early, or even make a choice for future development and planting of a crop. So maybe next time, you don't even plant in that particular vineyard. You go somewhere else. You find new places. And then I think we talked a lot about machine learning and AI. And it's as those technologies are more incorporated into the ag and tech spaces, those technologies are going to become more important here, because especially with microclimates, they all have their unique data footprint. So making sure that you have a model that's specifically trained for every environment and gets better and better at predicting with every, sort of return of data sets that come from sensors, the better. So it's mixing all of that stuff in. So to answer your question, I would say predictions are probably the most important. And I would say that's probably the meat and potatoes of where the app is and would go.
That's great. Thank you.
I'm still just like super blown away. Mike, do you want to add anything or ask another question? And then we're going to pause on this and bring our keynote in from Memphis.
Yeah, no, most definitely. So, I talked to Brian just real quick before this, and he asked me if I wanted to be the good cop or the bad cop. And I said, what about the corrupt cop? I mean, isn't that relevant these days? Right now, it's a joke. Hey, listen, I love this app. You guys did an amazing job in the short amount of time. I'm loving it. But from a startup standpoint, I am more worried about some other things behind the app. The app is cool, but you, based on the Kevin scenario, you talked to a farmer named Kevin, there was a negative $19,000 loss with, 108 hours time lost during the year. The 108 hours time loss is huge, but now you're implementing a system where are they basically spending more time on an app during that time? Are they losing more time during this, or are they actually, I mean, I get that you guys are bringing more data to them real time at the fingertips of their, at their fingertips every day, every morning they wake up, or every night before they go to bed. But are they going to be playing with all the cool features that you have and looking at, different things? That's just one question. And also your competitors, who else is doing this? Are you guys the only one doing this, or do you guys have 15 other competitors? And then now I'm trying to think about the cost structure of implementing this solution that you have. Now, is this really for all farmers, or is this really just for wineries that have a little bit more extra cushion to implement this solution, versus your small farmer like Kevin? I would love to see Kevin have this. It seems like he's a great guy just based on his pictures, and he has a small farm, but is he going to be able to afford to implement this? How much are these sensors? And what's your revenue model look like? I mean, is it subscription based? Or is it a one-time fee? You're implementing this for farmers? How does it all work? So I know it's a loaded question. You can't go through all those, but those are the things that are running through my head. I love the app. It looks great, but is it going to pay everyone that's on the team to make it feasible?
Let me answer your first question.
Thank you.
Could you remind me what your first question was?
Let's talk about the 19% or $19,000 loss yield and the 108 hours of lost time, and how does this fix that? Okay,
yeah. So yeah, in the case of Kevin, he doesn't indeed spend all that time looking at different sources of weather, and he does spend a lot of time. And your question was, are we just going to have him spend even more time now that he has all of these little gadgets to play around with? And the answer is no. We're hoping to decrease the time he spends, because all of this data is now aggregated in one source, and all of this information is presented in an easy geographical model where they have to take a quick glance, and where notifications warn the farmer before they need to even check the weather station reports. One of the problems that this app aims to solve is the fact that our farmer Kevin has to check 10 different sources to just get an idea of what he has to do. And these sources aren't always reliable, and they're not for farming. So that's the answer for the first question.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, you have a lot of really great questions, and honestly, every single one of them came up during our sprint, and we've got a lot of brilliant people on my team, and a lot of them have installed and created sensors. I wish one of our team members can make it, but he's actually sourced sensors as low as $1.99. So they're available. They go all the way from that price clear up, you know, like there's some pretty expensive ones. There's a company overseas that actually has one that's pretty advanced. So, you know, we didn't really have time to really show a scale model, but I want to kind of hit at a point whether or not we price this app out of someone's hands. I don't think so, because we talked very early on of this being an add-on service. So right out of the gate, it can be free to anyone. Anyone can plot out, even if it's not their land, they can plot out a piece of land and check out the data that's available coming in from those free services out there. So what's really interesting about that is you could actually, if you're analyzing a piece of land that you might want to purchase, you could actually watch it over time and see kind of what data is coming in, because you might be interested in that piece of land to grow grapes. That's a pretty big decision. So you kind of want to monitor it over time. So that's kind of the free side. Then as you go more deep into it, the more granular you get, that's where your add-ons come in. So as you add sensors, if you add a weather station, that's a new data point that our service adds more AI and more information. And the more granular you get with those sensors, the more benefit you get. But of course, our system needs a little bit more funding for that. So we plan on pricing those tiers in that way for that.
So it would be like subscription based, you add on more, you just pay a little bit more for added tier.
Exactly, yeah. And we know from talking to the growers that we've talked to that some of them are very familiar with their land. They actually want their hands dirty, kind of placing sensors, because they kind of have a sense of where they want them.
Yeah, they know where they want them, right? Exactly.
Yeah. So we know that we also want to be part of that process at some point. If we had this team, we'd love to have a small team that could come out and kind of be hand in hand with the setup, because I think they're very hands-on. They want to feel they want to walk through the process and understand it. It's a complicated thing, and we want to make it simple for them.
And then so that goes, sorry to cut you off, but like that goes into the next question is the scalability. You know, obviously you pilot this, you get it to one farmer, you get it to 3 farmers, 5 farmers, and like, how do you scale it from there? Like, what's the thought process behind that? Because it sounds like you want more hands-on, one that builds relationships with those farmers, but at the same time, I'm over here as like maybe an investor, like I want to see you guys take this across the world. Like, how fast can you go?
Justin, I could take that question.
Yeah, please do.
So one of the things I think would be really smart is to have an implementation team, a group of folks in a certain region who can go out and actually set the sensors with the farmer, people who understand that they're experts in their fields and can respect them for that expertise that they bring. Then you want a maintenance and operations team of folks that are going to go out there and actually take care of these sensors in real time. There's nothing worse than those data points falling out of use in real time. Then most importantly, I think what we want to do is track how we're able to make improvements. If we know the average yield is a 5% loss, and we're able to get them down to 4% or 3%, we know we're saving them thousands of dollars per year. More importantly, we're expecting climate change to have a huge impact on the Oregon winery industry in particular. So that 5% loss in typical yield that we're seeing from the wine industry report in 2019 is probably going to increase. We know that these farmers have 82 different varieties in the state of Oregon that they can select from. So one of the most important things we can do is suggest whether or not they should switch to one of those other 2 varieties, keeping in mind that we know it's going to take them 3 years to start generating a yield at minimum and 5 years on average. Most importantly, all that data aggregated over time helps us prove our value proposition. So I think that that's how we'd be able to generate revenue and scale it out region to region.
Awesome. I got some more questions, but I don't want to take too much time because we have our guest speaker here. So,
I
love this. This is great.
You know, I gotta be honest. I know you, and we have a friendly relationship, but I did not expect you to be bad cop. This
is great. This right here is going to solve a lot of problems, and we can scale this across the man. This is amazing stuff. I just want to make sure that you guys can do what you want to do by generating that revenue and making sure it's a good, you know, revenue structure for you with the cost structure as well.
I like the questions, and I really like the answers. Like, I'm really impressed with this team and like your.
Yeah, me too.
And I like what you just said, like, okay, maybe you need a different varietal, and that could be 3 to 5 years before you see any money off of it. Like it hits the requirement of like empathetically designing for somebody that's growing grapes. So I'm going to pause us. Is everyone okay with that? And I'm going to introduce our keynote speaker, Pete Nelson, who this is the second time I've had to present with Pete today. Pete is the president and executive director of Ag Launch, and Justin M. may be teeing up a small video that Pete sent us earlier today. Pete is joining us from Memphis. He is awesome. He said, I can do this after I read to my kids, so we appreciate that. He's actively been involved in building the support ecosystem for new ag enterprises for over 15 years, working with a variety of public and private sector partners. He's helped launch multiple startup companies, as well as develop sector-specific initiatives to fund, incubate, and accelerate ag companies with high growth potential. So I'm sure he appreciates Mike's questions a whole bunch for our Hey team. He's joining us from Memphis, Tennessee, and he actually finished his own pitch event last week. We are really glad to have you joining us, Pete, as Ag Launch serves as a model for our Northwest Ag Innovation Hub, and we're going to hand it over to you.
Sounds good. Hi, everybody. And we'll have a, instead of a keynote, we'll have sort of a discussion, but maybe that video will be a good like teaser. Are you able to play that on y'all's end?
We are working on it.
The confetti on my slide was a nice touch. That's never happened before.
Justin is a Canva master. It's heading to Justin right now because I'm not 1,000,000% sure how to do it, which I know disappoints everyone.
I might be able to do it from here if you want to. I just know it was kind of fuzzy, the version we usually. I can just do it, Karen. We can get going.
It wasn't bad for me when I was watching it earlier today. So if you want to do it, Pete, that'd be great.
Okay. Are we sharing? Does everybody see an Ag Launch logo there?
Yes.
Let's just see if we can get this to work.
Unparalleled commitment to continue every season in order to provide for a family, a piece of ground, and the greater community. Currently, agriculture relies heavily on antiquated strategies to improve yields and market and sell crops. However, these techniques tend to favor large agribusinesses over the interests of the farmer. There's a new future in front of us, one where agriculture transforms the health and wealth of farmers, the soil, and surrounding communities. A future driven by relationships and enabled by technology. A future that includes artificial intelligence and new markets leveraging blockchain. Ag Launch builds networks of farmers that work together to drive innovation and create new economic opportunities. Our farmers support new ag tech startups, conduct field trials, control their own data, and drive investment in new companies. These new companies are pioneering tools for soil health, water management, labor shortages, and resistant weeds. At the heart of this work is a simple idea. Farmers are the key to innovation, and because of that, they should get a direct benefit from it. Ag Launch has connected countless innovators from around the world and within our own communities with farmers to create new products and ideas. We also work directly with farmers on value-added projects, new crop trials, and alternative production models to improve sustainability and create local opportunity. Using Ag Launch's model, meaningful solutions will be built. Farmers will share in the profits, and a new pathway will be established to make agriculture more healthy, sustainable, and diverse. Please join us in building a farmer-owned bridge to the future and the next big thing in agriculture.
Good deal. Well, thank y'all for taking a minute to look at that. Even the little bit of discussion that I heard has got me all over the place trying to think of what I would like to share with you all. And just because everything you all are experiencing and thinking about are all kind of near and dear to us. What I'm going to do instead of getting too off script is I will stay with a few prepared slides. But what I'm hoping we can do is, and we can maybe just do it in the chat and just stop and take a pause when we need to talk and talk about it a little bit more. The topic, and Kara already sort of lay this out, and why we're working with OTA and why we're working with the Oregon group is because we're very aligned with even what you all just have gotten done with the challenge, and that is sitting down with farmers and trying to understand what the actual problems are, and then working backwards from that to develop solutions. Our whole business model is based on that, and how those solutions don't just help farmers where they are now, but help transition into things that I'm assuming most of you Oregonians would be sharing with me and my group around sustainability and soil health and other principles like that. And so this is an example. This is the first FAA approved drone to spray ag chemicals so that you can spot spray, very precise precision. It's also an enabling technology for biologic applications and cover crops. It also has the first FAA approved license to fly in agriculture with swarm. So they're flying 3 of these at one time. And this is an example of something that was built off the farms that we work with. And what you'll also see as I show you a couple of different technologies and things we're interested in is that farmers actually own equity in these companies. And the value prop started out something like this. Any of the nascent ideas, even the ones I think you all have talked about, all desperately need to be interacting directly with farmers in order to get up and off the ground. And so you need farmers. Any of the big ag companies contract with and have farmers doing all kinds of testing and validation. So any of the early companies generally haven't raised much money yet, but desperately need the services of working with farmers. And so we set out to build a way of connecting the two of those together. So our farmers specifically basically provide data, access, expertise, use of a welder, retrofitting, all those sort of even pre-proof of concept services to help get these companies up and off the ground. And what we're starting to see is a kind of a crazy idea. What we're starting to see in the kind of dismal performance of most ag tech solutions at this point, that we're getting a pretty good track record of actually getting some things off the ground. So just to kind of give you a sense of what this is about, and I think the terminology you'll probably understand. We've got, if you think about it like the sort of crossing the chasm sort of analogy, in agriculture, we've got, everybody's, I'm sure, familiar with this out there in your tech scene, but the whole crossing the chasm and your early adopters and innovators and all that. Somebody kind of nod. I can only see about 5 of you. Everybody track with me. I'm really dated in the way I describe this, but you know, I think about with those early adopters in something like a video game back in the day. You know, you got all your like Star Trek geeks like lined up at Best Buy for 3 days to buy the first thing, and then gradually, as you guys know, over time, costs lower, widespread adoption, and it moves into mainstream. I mean, that's what it's all about. It's an equation of capital and staying power. What most folks don't understand in the tech space that are getting into agriculture is the early adopter innovator farmers are actually much, much crazier than the Star Trek geeks camping out at Best Buy for 3 or 4 days. They're crazy. They'll do anything. They'll try anything. Everybody else, it's not really going across a chasm. It's scaling a very tall wall. Everybody else is actually way more recalcitrant than the average consumer that's going to be buying the next generation of the video game or whatever analogy you want to use. And so why that's interesting, important for you guys to know is a lot of the ag tech companies that get into ag, they feel like, man, we got all this traction. I got this 3 farmers that are signed up or 10 farmers, and we're starting to do stuff. And they don't really understand that when we're watching it as ag people, we're like, of course you've got Bob and Larry and Sally. They're going to sign up to any kind of crazy new shit that you put on the board. But how do you bridge that to the next thing? So what we've done is we've organized a business network of farmers, large, small, and for us, when we say large, we have a 25,000 acre rice, soybean, corn, cotton farm that's diversifying into cut flowers and vegetables and berries, all the way down to a 1 acre year-round leafy green hoop house business that supplies whole foods. So the power of this network is the fact that they're all early innovators in the way they think. They themselves think as entrepreneurs and are willing to participate in this network. And that's what we're working on with Kara and Alex and the group there in Oregon, is building a natural extension onto that. And you know, I'm a real like people person. I'm trying to make sure I can see all you on here. So the people that I can see, please sort of either nod or move me along if we're not covering something that we need to cover. So this network of farmers, they're aggregating data, we're demonstrating technologies on the farm, and we've expanded again into Iowa and Oregon because, and Mike mentioned this kind of earlier, I think intuitively, but because the more variety of crops, type farmers, markets, conditions that we get, the more likely for this farmer network to work. And so, you know, Mike was talking about, in my summary, Mike was, yeah, how do you get out of vineyards and scale? Well, what we've got as an opportunity together is to work with what we would call you all's very high value, low volume crops, all the way through some of the lower value, high volume crops that we have, which gives us an opportunity to try something in berries in the Willamette Valley, then try it in another crop, and then be able to scale into acres, or go the other way if we realize you'll never get a price point that's going to work in rice, but you could definitely get one in vineyards, and be able to expand the flexibility of what solutions come to the table. So this is the farmer network. This is the underpinnings of what we're trying to build with you all out in Oregon. And from a technology perspective, I'm just kind of using this as just a generic stage gate type slide, but farmers for us are involved at every level of what we do. Typically this ag space right now is got two types of business models that are at the table. Both of them will not work. The first one I'll pick on, because you guys are technologists, so I'll start on the other end, is the Boston type model around pharma. So that is highly controlled, highly regulated. And this was a model that moved into agriculture when we started using synthetic chemistries, more synthetic fertilizers. So you had, you know, high regulatory barriers. Most of the innovation happened in a wet lab or a lab, a lot of testing, and you know, whether it's a genetically engineered trait or an herbicide, those never going to get to the farmer until the last mile. And so that's been one big model of ag innovation that we believe is now fundamentally becoming obsolete. We'll talk about why that is. The other one's the tech model. And I know you all north there on the coast aren't like your friends down in California, but the Silicon Valley model, and I'm saying that tongue in cheek, friends, but the Silicon Valley model of push it out, sell, 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 it'll break. We'll go back and program version 2.0. We'll have it back out in 3 days, sell, 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 invest based on acquisition of customers. That also won't work. The reality is the farmers you all talk to during this sprint week are probably one person removed from the farmers that are a mile down the street from me. There are not that many of them in the entire country. And if you try to go sell an app for $5 that sucks, you don't get another shot. In fact, you don't get another shot just with that farmer. You don't get another shot with some almond guys that are south of you and some citrus guys in Florida, because your company starts getting a bad name. The converse idea, and I think what I love about this sprint challenge, is that if you talk to farmers and get them involved, you can get many, many, many multiples more than $5 worth of value by having them at the table, having them on your cap table, as a matter of fact, and have them a part of the deal. So the way we look at this, and it really is very different from like the accelerator kind of tech model. It almost fits more within corporate innovation, other than our corporate partners are a group of farmers scattered across the US, not a large company. But we go all the way back to discovery phase, sort of some of the stuff you all have done in that last week. And we actually scale with a group of farmers that are incentivized, and so that we can uptake the technologies that way. Is this a good place to pause and see if anybody's got any thoughts or questions so far?
Yeah, I was going to give you 2.5 more minutes before I pinged you and said you should do that. So I think this is a great opportunity.
Does anybody have any thoughts or questions so far? And now I've kind of got my screen where I can see you all. Despite all this talk about technology, I'm in the field farmer, so I have to like. Is this helpful? I mean, should I keep going with kind of the direction we're in?
I got a question.
Yeah, Mike.
So, I mean, this whole ag thing, I mean, it's just like, it's new to me, and I'm like learning, and I want to learn more about it. How receptive, and I think you answered this, but I just want to clarify, how receptive are farmers around the country to implementing technologies to help out with stuff? I mean, can you just walk up to any farmer and be like, hey, I got maybe some solutions for you from a technology standpoint. Are you interested, or do you still have to sell them on stuff?
Let's start with going how big the problem is. And I'm using row crop agriculture because it's just a good proxy. I'm not even advocating for corn or beans or whatever, but that's just a good proxy. So let me start by going, the problem is huge and incremental solutions are very helpful. So if you think about producing corn and soybeans and think about it like a factory, you know, we run a factory, we want to get it 97 point whatever % efficient, no downtime. A typical farm with laser level, this is row crop farm, I'm not saying anything about specialty crop farms in Oregon, but a typical well-run, laser graded, good soil, right management practices, third-party auditing farm with all the widgets that we have now is probably 25% efficient based on all the inefficiencies of weather, which I think you guys were talking about earlier. So there is plenty of room in my little sort of generic deals going, you know, like we replace a riveter in an auto plant with a robot, you're saving some money on a job and you're maybe increasing the actual output efficiency by 0.03%. In ag, a little intervention would go a long way. So that's the sell point. This is a perspective on what reality is with farmers. And I'll give you a couple, and again, I'm speaking to row crops. I'm not touching livestock or specialty crops here. There's nuances with all this. But in the row crop world, I'll give you a couple thoughts. One is, from a farm perspective, we think it's all garbage. Despite all the hype and everything, what DuPont's sending out and granular and farmer, it's garbage. It's built for selling seed, managing inventories for companies, not for helping us manage a farm. We can talk about that a little bit more. We don't like the way that data has been used and the way that our data has been used. There's a very minimal distrust. So what you're looking at there is probably about 6 months old, but that's kind of the data on receptivity to how this works. Now, what the good news is, and you were teasing this out when you were asking the Hay folks about, you know, business model. The flip side of this is if you build a company that cuts the farmer in, even your first beta customers and bring them in the deal, essentially get them on the cap table, get them incentivized correctly, and help answer some of these questions, you're way down the trail. And there is receptivity to this, but farmers are tired of getting run around. We've already been getting, and I'll give you a good example. You know, I've asked if you know about the John Deere data policies. We don't like them. We didn't like the Monsanto Roundup Ready policies, but we definitely don't like the data and the way John Deere operates. And I hope, is there a John Deere person on here? I hope there's not. So we don't like it.
Can you give me a backdrop real quick on that? Just real quick. John Deere.
It's basically, we have, you know, you think about, and you all are in a much different situation because of the fact you have small ag companies there. You guys are vertically integrated, meaning you are connected directly in a lot of ways to consume. You've got a different landscape. But in well, let me give you an example, Mike. Everybody's aware of how the chicken industry works, right? That you got a bunch of folks, mainly up in the hills, that get a contract. It's like sharecropping on steroids, right? So the only reason that Tyson even uses a farmer is so that they can get government subsidies and so that they can spread the risk out in the shittiest place where it's the most risky. So the farmer gets, you got to buy this certain chicken house, you get the delivery of these little babies, you grow them out for this time period, that's the farm. Cargill and ADM would do that with crops if it was not more complicated and it wasn't as easy as going chicken house, chicken, whatever. So what we're in the business of doing, and what we like about you all with much smaller entities and small agribusiness, is we view the same thing with the data and all this, is there's a tremendous amount of wealth that's going to be created on the backs of the distributed farmers around whether it be data, new product innovation, or whatever. So to John Deere, it's, you know, we buy their equipment. Now we have pretty onerous data use agreements. None of it's outside of what you would have maybe with buying, you know, modern equipment and autonomy and stuff like that in an automobile. But, you know, they get access to all the data that they generate. They get, you know, we can't fix equipment on the farm without going through dealers, et cetera, et cetera. So it's onerous, but we have no choice. We either are going to get a green tractor or a red tractor.
Wait, hold on 1 second. You just said that if I buy a John Deere tractor and it's broken, I can't fix it?
Yeah, and I'm giving you some general, there's some parameters around that, but
how is that America? Like, how is that American? Like, yeah, I'm just trying to, what?
It's a great, I mean, this is a great discussion, a really great discussion. And
let me grab my beer. I'll be right back. This is ridiculous. That was a joke. I'm just like saying, like, man, no way.
Yeah. And so what's it? So you think about the conversations we're having with our farmers, right? Is we don't really have a choice with John Deere or Case IH. We're going to have 2 or 3 sources for a tractor. So we're signing these data agreements, et cetera. We do have a choice with all these startups. So back to kind of your question earlier, Mike, in terms of how do you uptake and get scale, we're building a much more sophisticated approach. So as we're working, for example, with like autonomous robots and vehicles, we're putting data agreements together that are focused much more on field of use, much more in favor of the grower, and taking equity for basically helping getting them up off the ground. So that's how we're trying to flip the switch, but that's the environment that we're operating in. So all these issues, this is a good one. This whole, I can get you guys this report. This was just a Farm Journal generated thing where they went out to all their readers. But this gives you a little bit of a landscape. For a variety of reasons, this is important to you all, by the way, because you think about, I wish I'd seen all the solutions earlier, but you know, you build something for a vineyard, and I think Mike and Brian were asking exactly the right question, like, you know, how are you going to invest it? So your scale plan, if you're building something for a vineyard, you'll get some early sales because the margins, because of the output per acre, the need is so high, but your scale plan becomes like, now you got to go to Sonoma, you got to go to Chile, you got to be in New Zealand, Australia. Like your scale plan is you got small acres all over the globe if you're ever going to scale beyond a certain area. And so why this is what I'm kind of saying is kind of important is your scale plan's got to be row crops or larger acre crops if you're ever going to do what you were kind of describing, Mike, about getting across the country, right? And so thinking about that in the crop budgets and how that all fits together is just fundamentally important, including these attitudes. The way we get over, and I should have put my, instead of my crossing the chasm, my scaling the wall slide, but the way that we are doing this is by having farmers that are early adopters vested in the deals, and then over a series of 3 years, inviting other farmers to come actually see it in a field and incentivizing first farmers on the cap table, second generation farmers year 2 by having preferred 5-year data agreements or other agreements so they get the services that are reduced. And so you're building this sort of scaffolding by involving friends and family around the build is sort of how you're scaling it up.
Hey, Pete, there's a question in the chat, and then of all things, I'm going to be respectful of folks' time. So it says that the Farmers Bureau Network just raised $250 million in Series F. Do they fall victim to some of what you're talking about? Data abuse, no value added, selfish with motives. And have you noticed that Pete's from Memphis and has a Southern accent, which just made mine come out real bad?
Yeah. You just said y'all. Yeah, I think you might have even said y'all too. So was the question about Farmers Business Network or?
Yeah, the Farmers Business Network, do they fall victim to some of what you're talking about? Data abuse, no value added, selfish with motives, etc.
Yeah, I mean, the question all gets down to value prop, and we're noodling around this all the time, is especially if you've been trained to think, I got to get customers now. That's the way we're evaluating whether this works or not. So I got to get 20 farmers on this app for $5 now, one. And if you've been trained to think, the value is really not in what you're selling to the farmer, but capturing their information. You're building a platform for what's next is actually the business model. If those two things are the way you're operating, I'm not sure how you think about scaling forward. And I would argue there's a different way to think. One is let's involve the farmer actually in the deal. You've heard that a couple times first, and because this is about acres. Whether I've booked a sale for $5 an app, or I can go, I've got 17,000 acres now using it. that are willing in year 3 to turn that into a cash payment, that's better than just clicking out the sale on the front end without validating. So having a validation pathway. And what we're noodling around, can we get companies to market faster and scale them with building a tighter field of use agreement, focusing them on what they're actually trying to solve, not basically selling us something for the real play that their investors want, which is getting our data, getting access, whatever the play is. And so Farmers Business Network, what the things to like there are the fact that they're bringing transparency into things that obviously should be transparent, but ways that farmers have gotten screwed. Like you can buy, same farmer can go into the same retailer, you know, in the Mississippi Delta and same retailer, same size farm, and get quoted an entirely different price for the same chemical in the same unit. So it's a Wild West. They're shaking some of that out. So that's what's to like. It's disruptive. It's shaking out. It's moving in the right direction. Now they have been so heavily capitalized in order to scale and make that work. I'm not sure they can deliver without compromising some of the things that you all mentioned, I guess, in the chat just a second ago. So, you know, I've got them on my, like, they're not on the naughty list. They're probably our friends right now list. And they're also doing some really interesting things that affect you all and us, like some open source breeding platforms for specialty crops and thinking about how to value crops around attributes and not storageability or whatever. So there's some good stuff. They kind of fit in. There's another one that's raised a lot of money, Indigo Ag, that, you know, has also ran into the same problem. And we can talk about that one for just a minute, if that makes sense, Kara. And this is what I wanted. Is this good? Everybody good with just the conversation? Okay.
I've got one more question that TJ wants to ask, and then I may kind of wrap it up because I do want to get people out by 6:30.
Yeah, and I don't know. Yeah, you just call us when we got a call. You know me.
8:30. TJ, do you want to ask your question? You want to unmute?
Yeah, I really appreciated this conversation because, especially since you're coming from, you know, another area of the country, helps us sort of understand how farmers might think in other places if we were to try to expand. The one interesting thing I think about Oregon, and I think the value prop, and I wanted to get your feedback, is that the diversity of soil in Oregon is really significant. There are, you know, 12 soil orders and 10 of those are in the state of Oregon. The amount of products that a farmer can choose to grow is in the hundreds, as opposed to what we're seeing in places like Iowa, the Midwest, or even in Tennessee, where you see, you know, 2, 3, maybe even 10 dozen maximum different crops. So I think one of the value propositions is finding smaller farms who do have a microclimate view, and actually more of those exist than there are the larger folks out there. So I do think that there might be a value proposition there. That's one question for you, just specific to what we can grow in Oregon. The second one is more related to what you have in those areas of the country that I said a moment ago, which is this idea of climate change and the ability to use data analytics to improve or mitigate and adapt to climate change. And so mitigation is to change practices, add more NPK, do something with your hydrology, versus adaptation, which would be maybe shifting crops for some reason. And I'm looking at the 70%, 71%, really just reflecting the consultant who's talking to the farmer, same numbers essentially. Do you think those numbers will change as the bottom line starts to get impacted more and more by climate change in all areas of the country?
Yes. Let's do the crop one for the value prop on the crop first, and then we'll do that one. And it sounds like, Kara, I don't have that will be our end for tonight, but I'm happy to have a bigger conversation. So what I love what you said about the soil, microclimate, and small farmers. And you guys are well positioned. This is one of the reasons, like, Alex has been really cool about kind of going, we've got a lot to teach on our end. We have a lot to learn from you all, and we're dedicated to that. We love even where you guys already are. The 170 crops, 5 billion revenue in the 3 counties that Alex serves is awesome. Where ideally for small farmers, and for what your question is, where we go is, you know, there are 30,000 identified crops that have attributes, either health attributes, nutritional attributes that are already identified. Who knows how many are behind that? You all know we use about 4 of those. I'm just going off the top of my head, for 60-something% of the caloric intake in the world. So there's just a wealth of opportunity. Now, what are the barriers? And I'm talking to experts here in alternative crops or specialty crops, but you know, we've got contracting we can do that's transparent, but we still get screwed by ADM for fungible commodities that we use the Chicago board. So that's a transparent marketplace. Then we have a lot of contracting that happens for specialty crops. And that's the way that's done now. What we don't have is a mechanism or set of mechanisms that allow us to tie. And if you get really cool about what you're talking about, we're going from how the microorganisms in the soil work and how those affect actual attributes in plants that talk, whether it's a health, a nutrient density or whatever, and we're monetizing that ability. So it's like know your farmer traceability on crack. So what we don't have is what we believe will be these future mechanisms where you're actually building markets around attributes. The closest thing we have to do is putting an organic stamp on, or if you've got a local food stamp or whatever. But we believe in the future, for example, we're working with St. Jude Hospital, where we're realizing patients like purple carrots rather than orange carrots when they're coming out of chemotherapy because of the color. Well, we're figuring out ways to assign attributes now on the color of carrots. That would be just a simple example that I use all the time. So the driver on figuring out what you're talking about, the reality is there's no reason in the world you all can't be a global leader as you already are in a lot of areas with the logistics and some of the things we have in our area. We could do a lot better as robotics and other things come on. That if you're L'Oreal in France and you want calendula oil grown this certain way, you should be able to get that. You should be able to get any of these attributes delivered down to your local brewery or anywhere. So we can talk about that more and what the obstacles are. I'm hoping that we work more with you all on some of the solutions that we have funded. On the climate change mitigation, great topic. I'm going to throw up one little last map. Did we have time? One last map just to look at, just for the hell of it?
Yeah, Pete, for the hell of it, one more last map.
Okay, this one, hang on just a second, or so a chart. Let me see if I can get this, just because it'll be good. All right, so look at this and think about farming for just a minute in my area of the world. Let's see if y'all can, do you see this farm profitability is erratic? So back to your question. Yes, I believe that as we layer another layer to shake out uncertainty, that there's going to be more capability to provide solutions. We're already looking at genetics and where crops need to be. World Wildlife Fund, for example, I don't know if y'all have seen the Next California report, is starting to use modeling to go, what crops do you move from California into the Mississippi Delta, where we have water, different soil types. But I'm going to end with this, we had a great conversation, and to go, look at how crazy this is. Why do people farm? It's not intuitive if you're thinking about it from other industries. How does this even work? And it works because there's an equation even behind this between ownership of land, scalability, protecting infrastructure assets and off years, all kinds of things. And you add things like climate, regulating water, selling carbon, all those things on top of this. It makes a really, really even more interesting equation. So I'm glad to have the conversation. Hopefully there's a lot more to talk about. And Alex and Kara and Eric, thank you all. We've been really slow building partners. This is important to us. We've not chased all the shiny stars and tried to find folks that were aligned with us. We firmly believe that about you all. Love the challenge event any way we can help, and happy to even take and talk about more some of the ideas you guys have come up with and how we can work together on moving stuff forward and commercializing. So thank you all.
Pete, you're a superstar. It's 8:30 in Tennessee. We cannot appreciate you and thank you enough. I'm going to sing one of your praises real quick. You did an awesome job at the SEDCOR luncheon today. And if y'all didn't attend, you should definitely access the video, because not only did Pete talk about ag innovation, he talked about it equitably, because he lives in a part of the country that has a whole different demographic than we have in Oregon. And that was really inspiring to hear. And he also talked about urban farming. So I think you basically hit all of our target markets here in Oregon. And thank you for that. So we've got 2 minutes until 6:30. I was going to say we'd have more Q&A, but I think we've done a lot of that. And I do have to ask, I don't think we have any more presentations, which makes our next part really easy in terms of announcing a winner. Okay, yay, good. I don't really know how to thank you, Justin, and your team. We're going to keep plugging this forward, but we're happy to announce that Hay has won. And I think I can at least promise you some press. So Justin, I'll follow up with you because there is an opportunity to have an interview with somebody in Southern Willamette Valley next week. And I'd like to include y'all in that. So thank you for all that work. I mean, I know we can't do a real applause and cheering and hooping and hollering, but like give them all a virtual round of applause. That was amazing. And there we get more confetti from the TAO team and bubbles. One day we'll be in person and I may throw real confetti at you. Oh, I definitely won't have a drum, but this is a really impressive presentation that Justin put together. So now at 6:29, that concludes our first Ag Innovation Design Challenge of 2021. We are so thankful that you joined us. We appreciate folks engaging and participating throughout the week. We really appreciate it and know that it is a huge lift to do this online. In the meantime, keep innovating and giving us feedback. This is not the end of Hay. I firmly believe we're going to bring them back. Sometimes you may notice Alex and I not fully paying attention. It's because we're texting each other to figure out how we can move some of these forward. So I think we've got some additional opportunities for that crew. And I'll reiterate, this is just part of a larger conversation that Alex and SEDCOR are leading around ag tech in our region and innovation in the Mid-Valley, particularly including the Farmers Network. And Alex and Eric, I'm going to hand it over to y'all because you're going to close us out and send us home, even though I think most of us are home, but you're going to close us out and let us turn off our Zooms.
Yeah, thank you so much, everybody, for your time tonight. I really appreciate it. And thank you to the Hay team. Oh my God, that's an insane amount of work. That was my first text to Kara, was holy blank. That was a lot of effort. I really appreciate you guys putting that work in. I'm also thinking of the series of sort of pub talk meetups between Jeff Freeman and Pete Nelson. Jeff is joining us on the call. And I really appreciate Jeff's input all the time in his brain. And I would very much like to have a fireside chat with Pete and Jeff to talk about agriculture and whatever else. And I think we could probably spin up a whole new TAO series around ag and tech, just around that. So I am so thankful and appreciative of everybody taking the time in the and sort of hopefully towards the end of the Zoom era. But really looking forward to working, continuing to work with Pete and Ag Launch, TAO, and the amazing team. And huge plug for Justin for being the sort of wizard behind the curtain for making all the tech work this week. Yeah, thank you, Justin. And yeah, we're really excited about this. I think this is just sort of the beginning, and we are hoping to, prize money probably for the next, fingers crossed for the next design sprint. Hoping to get some pilot projects going out here with some of the Ag Launch team, and then hopefully, like I said earlier, I'd love to have these in person, take people on tours, meet the farmer, walk the farm, see what it all looks like on the ground, because I think that is so, you can't replace that with YouTube as much as I try, and sort of even Zoom conversations. So looking forward to more. Thank you so much, and yeah, have a great night.